Hey guys, John coming to you from Evolved Custom Rod Shops, showing you how I do pigments. As you can see, I got two clean mixing cups here. I got a couple popsicle sticks, clean, and I got a pick tool. The pick tool I got from Harbor Freight in a kit. You can really use toothpicks, whatever you want. We're going to start with the neon orange pigment and a clean popsicle stick. Now remember, a little goes a long way with this stuff. Just putting a dash in there. Once I've put the pigment in, because this pigment is so bright, I'm going to add some copper microflake in it. What this will do is give it a little pop. Also tone down that neon just a hair. And again, a little goes a long way with this stuff. Of course, I want to clean off the work surface that I'm going to be working on. I'm going to set my rod lathe on the dryer motor. Clean this off real good. This was the surface that I got the epoxy flaws out of. If you look up here, you can tap on this card and that'll get you to that video that shows you how I took care of those epoxy flaws. Next is my green pigment. Grab a fresh popsicle stick, grab a dab of green pigment, put it in a cup. To offset the bright neon green, I'm going to be using the emerald microflake in it. Also, when I put a final coat of epoxy over the entire rod, over the guides, over all the thread wraps, I'm going to be using the copper and the emerald microflake in the final coat. That way everything kind of ties together. As you can see, I'm not too worried about these tipping over because I don't have any epoxy in them yet. I'm going to turn my rod dryer on. I'm going to put a fresh base coat of clear epoxy on here. I'm using Pro Coat. It's just your standard rod builder thread epoxy in a, I believe the standard is a medium coat, not like a high coat or a thin coat. Thin coats don't work real well for this. In fact, a high build might even work better for this application, though I've never tried it. I have 5-minute epoxy at my house, I have paste epoxy at my house, and I have this, which is the standard Pro Coat, and really haven't needed any reason to use something else yet. Not saying I won't, but feel free to use different kinds of epoxy because it can definitely make a difference. So what I'm doing here is making sure I got everything even and level. I got any holes or gaps filled. The base layer on this I'm using is white for the pigments. You could use other colors, other base colors. Just keep in mind they might change the final product. Some of the pigments work really well with a black base. I've traditionally always used white, but black also works. One of the rods I'll be building next, I'll be using the black base. What I'm doing here is adding leftover epoxy that I mixed up to put the clear coat on. So I added a little extra into the mixing cup. That way I knew I had some to add to the pigments when I was done. That way you're not doing the job twice. All in all, I think I measured 4 cc's of epoxy total. So I'm mixing this up, and again, I'm using the orange end of the popsicle stick that I got the orange pigment off of. I did not use the Microflake end or anything like that. Not that that would make a difference when you're mixing, but just to keep everything uniform. The other thing you'll notice is the cups are less likely to tip over with epoxy in them. So what I'll do to start this off is pretty straightforward. I'll grab my pigmented epoxy, and the way I'm doing this is just dripping it over top of the rod. I'm making a band all the way around the rod. Okay, doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, flaws make up character when it comes to marbling. So don't worry about it being perfect. Just up from this, I'm going to put a band of green epoxy. And if you want to put it heavier in areas and then lighter in other areas, that's perfectly fine. Again, guys, there's no rules to this. It's custom rod building. You can do whatever you want. Whether, somebody likes it or doesn't like it, it really doesn't matter. So now what I did was I turned off my dryer. I'm dragging with my pick tool, I'm dragging the epoxy through each other. And it blends really nice because I have that base layer of clear epoxy. Now you got to keep the rod moving. You don't want to let it sit because there is a bit of an epoxy on here, and you'll see drips start to form if you let it sit for too long. And what I'm doing is just going for a nice pattern. Again, there's no set way of doing this. It's totally up to you. It's custom for a reason. Turning my rod dryer back on. I'm done with the heavier work. Now I'm going to go through it and just make sure I'm happy with what I see. You can add more pigment at this point if you want. You either use your pick tool or you use a popsicle stick and just drop epoxy where you want it and then pull it through. It's totally up to you. You could do it randomly. As you can see here, I wanted more orange at the base, so I actually put some on the pick, and I'm rubbing it in the holes around the base where I thought it would look better with more epoxy. Once I'm 100% satisfied with it, I will grab my heat source, whether you're using an alcohol torch or anything like that. I'm going to be using my my butane torch. I'm keeping it at a safe distance. I don't want the epoxy smoking. I don't want the epoxy to where it's so viscous it drips off because that's going to mess with the whole pattern. I just want to get a little heat to it to get any kind of bubbles out. Just remember, if you get any bubbles after this, you can go back over it. It's not going to look bad. And besides, I'm putting another coat over top of this with some copper and some emerald microflake in it on top of the already epoxied marbled section. Guys, I hope you found this useful. Just remember, when it comes to marbling, there are no rules. You can develop any kind of technique you want with this. It can be a lot of fun. Guys, I hope you liked the video. Like and subscribe for more videos. Hit the bell icon. That'll let you know when I make something new. Thanks again for watching.